No notes. No notes. No notes. Bruins destroy Penn State.
You are Locked On UCLA, your daily podcast on the UCLA Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to this edition of the Locked On UCLA Podcast. I'm your host, Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer. Thanks for making this show your first listen each and every day. It's free wherever you get your podcast. It's available on YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe, download. Thanks for your support. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. And where we get started, man, no notes for the Bruins. How much better could they play in this recent stretch where they end their West Coast dominance? UCLA, let's remember this as we go over a full West Coast trip for the Bruins. They've been at home for a few weeks. There's a lot going on when the Bruins got called out by their coach, when they got dominated by Maryland, when they fell to Rutgers. Everything was not going well on the court for the Bruins. They come back home, and next thing you know, they've won 7 in a row, and they were already a snub to not be in the top 25. Let's get that out right now. UCLA's already had a snub to being in the top. They were already a snub to not being in the top 25. Then they go beat a top 10 Michigan State team. Then they come and play a severely depleted Penn State team who comes across the country with UCLA having more rest, and the Bruins took care of business. Let me tell you this, UCLA at the end of the game got credited with a 4th turnover. So I was looking at the broadcast. They were saying UCLA had 3 turnovers. The Bruins either turned it over late once. The last 2 games, UCLA has turned it over 7 times. Not in each game, combined between 80 minutes of action. You can't play pickup ball that good. You're going to throw it out of bounds. You can't play that even if you said, all right, we're not going to mark turnovers. UCLA, as Mick Cronin said, if they play that brand of basketball, tough, Mick Cronin defense, turnover-free basketball, get the nets, you're going to start cutting them down. Now, this is all at home. You're playing teams that are making the trip out west, and UCLA is going to have to play some tough teams. Illinois on the road, Indiana, they're going to have a loud, noisy, boisterous crowd for the Bruins coming to Bloomington. And then they still got a trip to Purdue and Northwestern coming up later in February and maybe early March. There's still a lot more travel to go. So what the UCLA Bruins have to prove is that they can go more than one time zone away and win a game and keep this type of effort and dominate teams. They're not going to dominate Illinois and Indiana as they did Penn State, because Penn State is playing with Ace Baldwin Jr., who's banged up. You've got their best big man out, their second best player, Puff Johnson, out. This is not the same Penn State team that started the year, 8-1 and 12-4 to start the year. It's not the same team. And if Penn State can make that Big Ten tournament, they can go on a run. If they make the Big Ten tournament, they get healthy, and UCLA plays them again, that's not a team I'd want to face. But the team that UCLA faced today in what could have been deemed as a trap game, a team that's coming across the country, you're like, UCLA could fall asleep. Well, whatever Cronin told them in practice for 3 to 4 days straight made sure that they didn't get their heads too big. Their egos didn't rise. And the crowd is responding appropriately at Pauley Pavilion by filling up the seats. And a matinee affair on a Saturday afternoon when the Lakers are playing at the same time. Well, it's a beautiful day after some wet, rainy, wintry weather. They could have gone elsewhere in Westwood, in Los Angeles. Go look at the beach. Maybe not go in the water. Go look at the beach. No, you can go watch the Bruins utterly dominate. They didn't shoot well. They just utterly destroyed Penn State, a team who is one of the best at forcing turnovers in the country. So UCLA already played very clean basketball against Michigan State this week and killed them in points off turnovers. In this game, UCLA won by 24 points. UCLA had 24 points off turnovers. Penn State had 0. You can look at any other stat. You can look at, yes, UCLA made buckets. They got in the fast break largely because of the turnovers. They dominated points in the paint. All that came from UCLA's points off turnovers. Now, when a team turns it over 18 times and you're scoring about a point per turnover, right? If you get deeply analytical into basketball, teams want to score a little more than a point per possession. The real good teams can score and the higher 1 point something in points per possession. If UCLA is that good at points off of turnovers, 1 point off turnover forced, UCLA is good. And what I was kind of taking from the broadcast between Don McClain and on the Big Ten Network was that UCLA doesn't force a lot of live ball turnovers. They just make the game ugly. They make it tough for you to score. And continually under Mick Cronin, it's the deflections, hands in the passing lanes. And today, the live ball turnovers, if you do that again and again, that is when UCLA this year can not only get in the fast break, but they got multiple guys who can lead the break, pass it forward, and lead that to easy points. The Bruins aren't necessarily a team that can go fast, but they can turn it up a notch and score with reckless abandon. And there's a couple of points where UCLA missed some layups and missed a dunk or two. So this could have been an even bigger margin of victory. And what this tells you is UCLA's figured something out. Let's go back one more time. In a game where Penn State was small, UCLA had a very quiet start from Bilodeau, who didn't have his best shooting performance, but scored 11 points in 20 minutes. We saw Adaimata play 10 minutes, have 5 points, 3 rebounds, a block or two. And some of those points and some of those minutes came when UCLA was already up 20 in the second portion of the second half. So their biggest reason for success lately with Mata didn't really have a big game. Didn't have a big week, and UCLA still notched 2 big wins. William Kyle, I liked what he did for UCLA today. Kyle in 10 minutes had a block shot, had a steal, a couple of rebounds, 4 points. Huge. I like him getting big time minutes. And there's going to be games when UCLA needs a more athletic big man down there. In William Kyle, flushed it in somebody's face, made some defensive plays with his athleticism. I like to see that. The story, though, is Kobe Johnson, who had a double-double, 15 points, 13 rebounds, 6 assists. Of course, as many UCLA players had 0 turnovers and 4 steals and a block shot. That is utter dominance. Coming into the game, Ace Baldwin Jr. for Penn State was the one guy on the floor that has better statistical numbers defensively than Kobe Johnson when it comes to steals per game. That Baldwin Jr. is as good as it gets in the country, National Defensive Player of the Year. Kobe Johnson, with the hype Cronin gave him prior to the season, comparing him to Jalen Clark, I did something similar as well, but Cronin gave him a lot of love as a reason he wanted to go steal the team across town's captain and bring him to UCLA. It's for games like this when he plays 36 minutes, and he didn't even make threes today. But that senior veteran leadership, where if teams are going to turn it over, how many times was he leading the break? He should have flushed it when he missed the layup in the middle of the game. Could have had more points. And when he's not shooting it well from deep, he can still score upwards of 12 to 15 points, dish out some assists, be in good positions for rebounds, and get UCLA more possessions by ripping the ball from the opponents. So this was the Kobe Johnson game. Now, it was great to see Sebastian Mack get to the line, do some great things. Sky Clark was as efficient as it gets with 14 points, 3 rebounds, 6 of 7 shooting, but Kobe Johnson was all over the floor. He dominates like this. UCLA isn't going to be losing many games, or they won't be out of them if he is as good as he was today off it. Just about every phase of the game, sharing, carrying, defense, and then also getting some individual stats as well. That was utter dominance for Kobe Johnson. We'll talk more about what's coming up for UCLA, but a huge West Coast stint, I should say, at home for the Bruins. 7-0. 7-0 against a team where Penn State is severely shorthanded. This is not the best version of Penn State, but this is what you have to do to those teams. They come home, they fight, they make it close for 20 minutes, and when they cut it to 5 in the early portion of the second half, Cronin's like, we better win this game. You better kick their butt. And the Bruins just dominated, utterly dominated in a game where Penn State made it a little nervous for a bit in the second half, and the Bruins are like, no. This is our game to win. We're better. We're healthier. We're well rested. And we're playing the best basketball that they've played the whole season long. Now, the question is, can they continue that on the road? My question to you is, what are you doing on this Saturday afternoon if you're like, all right, I had plans? Well, you could have gone to Game Time. And if you're looking for tickets to the next big event, could have been there cheering on the Bruins. Now you got to wait 10 days and wait a couple weeks till maybe Bill Walton Day and go to Game Time and get your tickets for the next UCLA game. Or you can go see a concert or a comedy show. You could have double dipped on a beautiful day in Southern California, and Game Time Picks has the app workings, the deals right for you and I. The super deal that helped me get me a prime seat when I was in New York traveling during the holidays. I got to see 3 to 4 different venues, and I used Game Time Picks to get the best deals on some of the best seats just to get me in-house, which helped me do what I like to do best, which is just be in the arena. And with Game Time's lowest price guarantee, you find a better deal somewhere else, they'll refund you 110% of the difference, and your tickets are guaranteed to be delivered on time. Easy cancellation options also if something comes up. Make your next event even better by download the Game Time app. Download that app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, so what's coming up next for UCLA? Let's remind everybody listening, watching at home, this was the first time a Big Ten team in this inaugural Big Ten season came out west to play the LA schools. We're not talking Oregon and Washington. We're talking the Big Ten teams that have come out to face UCLA and SC on the road in either Galen Center or Pauley Pavilion. This is the first time out of 5 teams that have done it so far that have played UCLA first. First time. All the other games, they went to go play USC first. They play UCLA first. The Bruins had not played since Tuesday. I think Penn State played Wednesday. They make the cross-country trip. As banged up as they are, some injuries, they've had extended absences. Their best player, Baldwin, I've been talking to Penn State sources. He's really banged up as well, playing through things. A team that is just trying to be that 15 seed in the Big Ten tournament and get that big win on the road. Penn State hadn't won a single game on the road. This is what you have to do. Get a growing fan presence at Pauley Pavilion, which UCLA only has 3 more home games left. Think about that. Only 3 more home games left for UCLA in the regular season, and then it gets real in March. So the Bruins, against a team that is testing the waters, playing a better UCLA team, peaking at the right time, coming off a massive victory over Michigan State, UCLA now has themselves in 4th place, tied with Wisconsin, but they have the head-to-head record, so they're a top 4 team with that double bye potential in the Big Ten tournament. The difference, you can only either play 3 games in 3 days if you go all the way in the Big Ten tournament, or you get to play a lot less games and be more well-rested when you play in the tournament, the Big Ten tournament or the NCAA tournament, all right? Huge for the Bruins to get further up the standings, where it's unlikely that they come into first. They're a couple of games behind the top 3 teams who all have 2 losses apiece. I still think UCLA has a chance to maybe get a 3 seed if, say, Michigan State drops. But I'm happy with UCLA hovering around the 4th seed with a big week coming up. So a big West Coast stretch. I remember thinking I'd be happy if this team goes 5-2 where they were at in mid-January. All right? I'm looking at this, right? I got my schedule. Got my January schedule right here. A lot of those in early January until they played Iowa January 17th. So more than half the month had gone by, the opening month of the calendar year, before we had seen a UCLA victory. All right, nearly 3 to 4 weeks had gone by between UCLA wins. My oh my, have things changed dramatically. Mata comes in, gives UCLA an improved presence in the post, even though that first win against Iowa that kickstarted this streak, it was a William Kyle day. We've started to see different players pick it up. Dylan Andrews, improved play. Kobe Johnson, arguably his best game, if not his most dominant game, as a UCLA Bruin combined on both sides of the floor. When Penn State's turning it over, how many times was Johnson just having his hand in the lane? Sky Clark making some big-time jump shots. Mack making some plays, cutting to the rim. Cronin has figured out a rotation and knows how to play it against different lineups. Penn State was small, so it was a lot less of Mata, and he went small with Bilodeau not shooting as well. Daly didn't have his best game overall as a Bruin, 7 points, 4 fouls in 16 minutes. Think about that. You got a combined effort from Eric Daly Jr. of 7 points in 16 minutes. Dylan Andrews shot it all right. You had no made shots from Stefanovic. Adai Mata, Dylan Andrews, and Eric Daly Jr. combined for 17 points. 4 of 13, I'm doing it quickly, 8 of 22. Not the most efficient shooting when you've got advantages in those spots. When you have Daly as the 4, Dylan Andrews as a quick point guard, and then a Diamara, the 7-3 Spaniard. And the Bruins still dominated this game because they now have that strategy Cronin wanted, which was he can go to different players and they can all step up. There can be a new leading scorer every game. And I thought in this season, there could be close to 7 to 8 leading scorers. And I can touch on that in another episode. I haven't looked up those numbers. And this was Kobe Johnson's turn. Not to light it up from 3, but to be the Kobe Johnson that Mick Cronin recruited to come here to UCLA and dominate. He didn't even need to score in this game, but because he had easy steals, live ball turnovers, led to so many layups, so many breakouts, that the Bruins turned that into fast break points. Now it comes up for UCLA's how not only they handle the travel, but how do they return home? UCLA, from the day I'm recording this podcast, February 8th, after they win against Penn State, 78-54, they go to Illinois, Indiana, then they get to host Minnesota and Ohio State. Ohio State, that's the big day where the Bruins are going to honor Bill Walton. And then they end the February and begin the March part of the calendar going to Purdue and then Northwestern. All right, this is where they go back and forth. This is where they're going to know what it's like to travel from California all the way to Indiana and Illinois. A couple of times, 3 times to the state of Indiana from now until the beginning of the Big Ten tournament, which starts in a little over a month, March 12th. I'm not sure what time they have to be there, if they're top 4 seed or 15 seed. Maybe it varies, maybe it doesn't. The travel is going to get much harder. So the Bruins probably aren't going to be the freshest team when it comes to the NCAA tournament or the Big Ten tournament. So stacking some wins, of course, it's much easier to get a quad 1 win on the road in terms of, all right, teams have a much bigger gap. You can be, 1 to 50 or whatever it is for a quad 1 win. UCLA needs to start stacking road wins. UCLA this year, you look at the top 4 teams in the conference, those are all teams that are at least 500 or better on the road. All the teams in the top 4 of the Big Ten Conference have held serve, mostly at home. UCLA this year, 13-1, only loss coming to Michigan. And they have done work on the road, which is very tough to do in this conference, which goes from Los Angeles all the way to Maryland and Piscataway, New Jersey. All right. As wacky as the conference is, that's a conference that has 18 teams, not just a professional league. That's how tough it is to go from one side of the country to the other and come away with wins. So UCLA with an even 500 record. The Bruins, if you include their neutral site games, are 5-5 between true road games and neutral site games. Simply doing that the rest of the way, UCLA, I think, could coast themselves into a 5 seed and a very small chance at a 4 seed. If UCLA simply splits the next few road games. Now, of course, if you get the big name ones like the Illinois, you beat a Purdue in there and you lose a heartbreaker at Northwestern or Indiana in front of some crazy fans wanting a big win over UCLA, okay. But you split those road games and sweep the home games, which includes USC, who is flirting with a tournament berth at the moment. You add in Minnesota, which is right after UCLA heads east and comes back west. And then on Bill Walton Day against Ohio State, a February 23rd matinee Sunday affair. The Bruins, that would put them at 4 in, if I'm doing my math right, doesn't look like I'm doing my math right. The next few games, so you get 2, be 5-2. If the Bruins end this stretch 5-2, which I think is still a tall order to even do that, that would put UCLA's end of season record prior to the Big Ten tournament at 23-8. 23-8 heading into a Big Ten tournament. It's going to be a lot of losses, but the Big Ten has been a grueling grind for UCLA this year. So I think if they go 5-2 to end the season, that is a victory. 5-2 after a 7-0 West Coast stretch. That is one of the best stretches UCLA's had on the coast against some of the best teams. Again, Penn State, their MO is to turn you over. Healthy or not, they like to force you into turnovers. Michigan State, a team that is physical, outworked the Bruins on the board, on the glass, and UCLA still is like, yeah, we're going to dominate you in taking care of the basketball and making sure you turn it over and that leads to points off turnovers. Twice in a row against two very different teams, UCLA has done something that Mick Cronin says if they do that continuously in the month of March, into April, they'll be cutting down the nets. And I've been high on this team. A little frustrated when they went through a rough stretch against some okay teams in early to mid-January, with the ugliest loss of the year being that North Carolina game in New York in the non-conference, which I think everybody likes to lump into a 5 games lost in 6 game stretch, although I kind of keep the 24 calendar year and the 25 calendar year separate. Bruins have big wins. The Arizona win looks more impressive. New Mexico is no slouch. They are currently out, depending on what bracket or bracketology you like to use. They're a tournament team, so a neutral site early season loss to them isn't looking as bad. And we clearly see when UCLA doesn't turn it over, they are nearly unbeatable. Pretty much unbeatable, and they are unbeatable at home if they don't turn it over. Does not happen, whether it's close, whether it's a blowout. UCLA is a very tough team to beat when you don't turn over the basketball. So it's great to see UCLA learning different ways to win with different leaders in the clubhouse, scoring-wise, rebounding-wise. When your best defender is one of your best rebounders and your best scorer of the day, that's a plus. Sometimes you can lean on Mata, just back to the basket layups, or you can lean on UCLA with the three-point shooting fest. They've showcased many different ways. They can outscore Wisconsin. They can make it ugly and beat Arizona in a neutral site, ugly defensive battle. They've won different ways against different teams. Have proven we can outscore you. We can play it ugly. We can go back and forth, come back, play with the lead, getting shrunk down, win close games. That is what makes me excited for UCLA going forward. Even if they get a little sluggish, Cronin's Final Four year, UCLA lost, 4 or 5 in a row to end the season in 2021. So don't get distraught if UCLA goes on the road against a team, this conference, which currently has 10, maybe 11 teams slotted for NCAA tournament spots. Out of 18 teams, imagine that. Imagine if you're in the Pac-12 and every team, 11 of 12 teams, was that good to make the NCAA tournament. That's how deep this Big 10, Big 18 is right now. So even if UCLA goes 2-5, we cannot get distraught. Of course, depending on how and what's the reason why, but winning on the road is tough to do in the conference. If the Bruins do that at 500 clip, win the rest of their home games, they are still going to be a top 5 seed, if not a top 6 seed, which means UCLA should play on the West Coast, whether it's Seattle first round or Denver in the first round. And maybe if you cross your fingers enough, the Bruins can get that lucky 4 to 5 seed, where they're given a gift by the selection committee of playing on the West Coast in the first round and the West Regional in San Francisco. That is the goal for UCLA, to not have to travel until you reach a third weekend. Of course, peaking and scouting and game plans, staying healthy, but not traveling is a huge part for UCLA's first 2 weekends of the NCAA tournament. They can just sit there and hop on an hour flight to Denver, a little up and down going to San Francisco. Huge for UCLA staying rested, staying healthy to make a potentially deep NCAA tournament run. Well, the big game is literally almost here, and there's no better way to make it more exciting than, of course, sitting on your couch, eating all the food, watching all the commercials. With Prize Picks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. Over 10 million members and billions in winnings awarded, Prize Picks makes it fun and simple to get in the action. All you have to do is choose more or less on at least 2 player projections, and if you're right, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. And here's a free pick for you for the big game. Patrick Mahomes only needs to throw 1 yard to win. So pair that with 1 more winning correct pick, and you're cashing out. Yeah, 1 passing yard for Patrick Mahomes. That's a gimme. Patrick Mahomes right there. That is a gimme in this big game. And if you want to go more on Travis Kelce receiving yards, you might hit on the first Kansas City Chief offensive possession if you choose more for Travis Kelce's receiving yards and more on the quarterback's passing yardage. You can get cashed out in as little as 15 minutes, and you can go check out the promos all for the big game as well. Download the app today. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, that's code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. are getting ready to wrap things up for UCLA here in Locked On UCLA. The Bruins, absolute dominant win against Penn State. Can't state enough. Of course, this is a game UCLA was favored in. Should have been favored by close to double figures considering the injuries Penn State came in with. This in their center, their power forward, maybe a banged up Ace Baldwin Jr. too. And now UCLA has won 7 in a row. Bookended by dominant victories against Iowa and Penn State. UCLA has an 18-6 record, 7 wins in a row. They're 13-1 overall at Pauley Pavilion with the crowd slowly growing. And they should only peak at the end of the year when they have Bill Walton Remembrance Day. And then they got USC to end the regular season, a team that is fighting to get in the NCAA tournament. So that senior day shouldn't be any less emotional when the Trojans come to town to end the season and the regular season in the first week of March. 9-4 in the Big Ten. They have a top 4 spot right now, which would be a double bye in a 15-team conference tournament. It sounds absurd to say, but that is huge for UCLA if you want to skip all the crazy nonsense of the Big Ten tournament and only play good teams that don't hurt your resume or seeding prior to the NCAA tournament. Now for UCLA, the road gets tough because you actually got to go on the road for the first time in nearly a month and make sure that they can keep their 7-game winning streak alive. The one thing that's going to be helpful for UCLA, I don't know if it's helpful, maybe I take that back. One thing that should be true come Tuesday when they take on Illinois, there is going to be a ranking next to UCLA's name. And by golly, if there's not, then I don't know what these pollsters are watching. I don't know what they're watching. I know pretty soon they might have that top 16 reveal in the NCAA tournament. I forget when that is, but they like to, here's a little top 16 reveal. Maybe UCLA creeps into that at some point. Maybe if they keep winning. I think it's unlikely for UCLA to win the next 7 games in a row and end on a 14-game winning streak. I don't think that's going to happen. But again, my dream, UCLA 5-2. And that was my dream for UCLA in the West Coast. And they just went 7-0. So if they surpass expectations already, they continue to do that. And the Bruins are, they're going to the top of the mountain potentially. UCLA, I think, should be a top 18 to 20, 25 team. They probably get underranked. They'll probably be a 21st ranked team. I think UCLA should be a top 18, top 17 team. The teams like the UConns, those 20 teams, the Kansases of the world, they keep stacking up losses, albeit, yes, the Big East is tough. The Big 12 is tough, but so is the Big 10. And a lot of these teams have pretty similar wins to UCLA. But the Bruins have beaten a Big 12 leader on the road in a road neutral site game. UCLA beat a Big 10 leader, Michigan State, pound for pounds. They're going to go play Purdue later in the season. They somewhat kept up with Michigan. Those wins hopefully continue to stack up for UCLA and start measuring up with these teams winning more and more. And I think UCLA is worthy of a top 18, top 17 ranking after going in and then falling right back out after the horrible start in January. Things have flipped around and the sun is shining here in Southern California today. It might be raining. That's why the Bruins are getting out of town before it rains again. Make sure they start raining some threes against Illinois and make sure, as Cronin likes to say, the defense better travel. Because if it doesn't travel, it could be just as ugly as it was in January. Defense has got to travel. The energy's got to travel. And the Bruins have to make some shots and not just go through woeful stretches like we saw in that 4-game stretch. The 5 games out of 6-game stretch, if you really want to stretch it, including the North Carolina game. The Bruins will be ranked. They've won 7 in a row, and life is good right now. So get your hands up, Bruins fans. 8 clap time, baby. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. UCLA. UCLA. Fight, fight, fight. This has been Locked On UCLA. Zach signing off. Go Bruins.